Good evening. I declare the Ordinary Council meeting of the 29th of July held in Council Chambers at Level 2, 388 Hay Street, open at 5:34 p.m. Welcome councillors, welcome staff and welcome members of the public. It's nice to see a few of you here this evening. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on this evening, and I recognise their ongoing connection to the land and waterways of Subiaco. Okay, I'll take attendances now, and we've got one councillor attending electronically with prior approval. He may have to absent himself for the confidential section of the meeting, but for now we've got Councillor Powell joining remotely, and I see the remaining elected members of council are here in person in the chamber, which is great to see. And we are going to be ably assisted this evening by the CEO and his directors and a number of staff as well, so welcome to you all. Okay, are there any leave of absence requests for upcoming periods? Councillor White.
Yes, please. I'd like to request leave from the 25th of August to the 25th of September. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor O'Connor, thank you, and Councillor Burns seconding. Okay, this evening I think we'll have to vote with show of hands on all items, so I'll put that to the vote now, and if Councillor Powell can be visible, he can vote as well, otherwise we will leave him out. All those in favour? Okay, the leave is carried unanimously on a vote of 9-0. I think that was the only leave request. Councillor Johnston. That's right. You did email us about an upcoming period of leave. Please remind us what the dates are. Thank you. And that was the 29th of August to the 27th of August to the 29th of September, was it? If those are the dates, then those are the dates, yeah. Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Jones and Councillor De Vries. Thank you. All those in favour? Okay, I'm going to say that's also approved with a vote of 8-0. I can't see Councillor Powell at the moment. I can see his face, but I can't see a hand. We'll call it 8-0. Okay, are there any disclosures of interest this evening? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, there were no public questions taken on notice, so we'll move to public question time. 2 questions, both in relation to C1. We'll start with Peter McDonald of Onslow Road, Shenton Park. Welcome, Peter.
Welcome, councillors, mayors. I'm here with my tape measure from measuring lanes in the City of Subiaco. LPP 1.2 has some provisions that in some circumstances protect the primary outdoor living areas of low-density properties from being overlooked by high-density developments seeking height concessions relative to the R codes. The current LPP 1.2 provides that an acceptable outcome is achieved where a high-density development exceeds the maximum building height limit provided in the R codes volume 2 by not more than 1 storey, provided the additional storey is set back to not be substantially visible from the middle of a primary outdoor living area of the adjoining low-density dwelling. The question is, are some or all of the R20 coded properties located at numbers 5 to 43 Evans Street in Shenton Park, that is the lake-facing homes on Evans Street, subject to the protection afforded by subparagraph A 2.2.4a of tables 3 and 4 in sections 5 and 6 of LPP 1.2, where there may be high density developments on some or all of the R60 or R80 coded properties located at numbers 156 to 236 Onslow Road, Shenton Park, under the current LPP 1.2. And the second question, do you want the second question now? Is that if the answer to the above question is yes, would the proposed amendments to replace the word adjoining with the word abutting in subparagraph A 2.2.4a of tables 3 and 4 in LPP 1.2 deprive some or all of the properties at numbers 5 to 43 Evans Street of the overlooking protection for their primary outdoor living areas as provided for in the current LPP 1.2?
Thanks for the question. Director of Development Services.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor. So I've tried to summarise the answer in the questions and answers document that we've put out. It is a little bit complex, but the crux of it is that the properties at 5 to 43 Evans are zoned residential R20, and they have a rear right-of-way access in between the properties at 168 to 240 Onslow Road, and they're zoned residential R60. So we did have local planning policies which applied to high density development proposals. That was LPP 1.2. However, the R codes changed some time ago, and these were state government changes, and they have been updated to change the way that they apply. So instead of having low density and high density codes, as I had Volume 1 and Volume 2, they now have Volume 1 Part B, which applies to single houses R40 and below, group and multiple dwellings R25 and below. Even more confusing, Volume 1 Part C, which is single houses R50 and above, group dwellings R30 and above, and multiple dwellings at R30 to R60. And Volume 2, which is multiple dwellings R80 and above, and activity centres. So previously, development proposals on the Onslow Road properties would have been under Volume 2, but now they're in Volume 1 Part C. So the state government has moved where they apply. So Local Planning Policy 1.2 doesn't apply anymore, and the controls are in Volume 1 Part C. Some people call these the medium density codes. So for this area, the maximum building height for multiple group dwelling development is 3 stories, and under the R codes, development over 2 stories has a minimum 3 metre setback from the right-of-way, and the right-of-way is 5 metres wide. If you may have confirmed that. So it effectively provides a minimum 8 metre setback for the 3rd story. And the combination of the setback and the building height provisions in the R codes, they provide sufficient setbacks to the Evans Street properties. Actually, nothing has changed from when they were in LPP 1.2. So there's been no changes to the policy interventions for this area.
One of the properties was R80. One of the Onslow Road properties is R80.
So the R80 properties would have their controls under LPP 1.2. So that would also have setback. I haven't included them in that answer, but I think that one's potentially on the corner of Onslow Road. So yeah, Excelsior, that's right. So in response to your second question, because the proposed changes to the wording in the policy has no bearing to the majority of the properties on Evans Street, LPP 1.2 doesn't apply anymore for these properties. As the R codes have now transitioned into essentially 3 different documents. Thank you. Yeah, look, we haven't included the information for the setbacks for the R80 properties. That they are in R codes Volume 2, so I can get back to you after this to give you those setbacks.
Thanks, Mr. Petrosky. The next question comes from Josephine McPhee of Morgan Road, Shenton Park. Morgan Street, in fact. Ms. McPhee.
Here we go. Okay, a little bit of a background. LPP 1.2 has some provisions that in some circumstances provide some setback protections for properties in heritage protected areas, and where a high density development is proposed for an adjoining property. The current LPP 1.2 provides that an acceptable outcome is achieved where a high density development adjoins a property in a heritage protected area and the development is set back sufficiently to appropriately respond to the heritage context with the support of a heritage impact assessment. Question 1. Are some or all of the heritage area R20 coded properties located at numbers 2 to 26 Campbell Street, Subiaco, subject to the protection provided by paragraph A2.4.4 of Table 3 and paragraph A2 A2.4.5 of Table 4 in sections 5 and 6 of the LPP 1.2, where there may be high-density developments on some or all of the R-coded properties located at numbers 283 to 323 Rockaby Road, Subiaco, under the current LPP 1.2. That's a mouthful, wasn't it? Shall I keep going with the next question before I run out of steam? Okay, question 2. If the answer to the above question is yes, would the proposed amendments to replace the word adjoins with the word abuts in paragraphs A2.4.4 of Table 3 and in paragraphs A2.4.5 of Table 4 of LPP 1.2 derive some or all of the heritage area properties at number 2 to 26 Campbell Street, Subiaco, of the heritage setbacks protections that are provided for in the current LPP 1.2? Question mark. Keep going.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, is that not the end of the question?
A
A further query. Oh, there's
look, there's
sub
more.
parts to the question. Okay, because we don't have too many, Ms. McPhee, please ask your the second part of question 2.
Thank you. A further query is that if the answer to question 1, I hope you're keeping up with me here, is no, due to the width of the right-of-way behind the Rockaby Road properties, are there other properties in the heritage areas in the city and where the proposed changes to A2, I'm going, 4.4 and A2 4.5 would impact the current heritage setback protections? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Director.
Thank you, and welcome to sometimes very complex planning terminology that sometimes only planners can understand. So essentially the answer is all in one. The properties on Campbell Street, they're separated from the properties on Rockaby Road by the laneway to the east. Now, the Rockaby Road properties are zoned mixed use, and they're subject to controls in a local development plan, and that's actually listed in our local planning scheme. So because the Rockaby Road properties have their controls in it's called the Rockaby Road South Local Development Plan, as you may remember, they're actually not covered in LPP 1.2. So their setbacks and height controls are all in the Rockaby Road South. So we're not actually touching or changing any of that. Now that local development plan requires minimum rear setbacks of 3 metres for the first 2 stories and 9 metres for the 3rd story and above for the properties on Rockaby Road. And it's also got information in there about heritage, which is, it is a key consideration for proposals which are close to heritage areas, and we manage that through close consideration and the requirement of heritage impact statements that need to be submitted. So the crux is nothing in an LPP 1.2 really applies to the Rockaby Road South properties. It's all in the LDP, and that's not being changed. Yes, so I guess in the context of the heritage areas have their own standard provisions and development controls. So nothing in LPP 1.2 is going to be impacting any changes because those heritage areas have their own controls and requirements in there. So that won't be impacted by any changes from 1.2.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of public questions, so we'll move on to public statements now. We've got a single public statement submitted by Peter McDonald of Onslow Road, Shenton Park, in relation to C1. Mr. McDonald.
The officer report recommends some modifications for finalising the updates to the LPPs 1.1 and 1.2 to matters raised in the submissions received during the recent public consultation. The modifications relate to increased lot boundary setback requirements and also clarify the definition of usage of terms density interface and abutting across both policies. Heritage protection related modifications have been made to LPP 1.2 as well as LPP 1.1 in addition, because the terms density interface, abutting, adjoining and interface areas, but particularly abutting and adjoining, appear in many places in both policies, with the sole exception of the last term, which appears in LPP 1.2 in many places, but not LPP 1.1, and I'm referring there to interface area. There are a large number of changes to both policies which have been made to respond to the public sector consultation submissions, limited as they were. The combined effect of the changes originally proposed to respond to the state government change the residential design codes, to the public consultation submissions and to do some necessary housekeeping on the LPPs appears to be that the proposed end result has strayed from the original objective of just replacing the height limit protections with setback protections in order to come into line with the new state legislation requirements. There appear to me to be many unintended consequences, not only in terms of heritage protection, but also in terms of protections that apply at the density interfaces as a result of the near complete replacement of the term adjoining with the newly defined term abutting. And we don't have any problems with the newly defined term. Given the large number of changes to the text of the proposed LPPs that were submitted to recent public consultation, it would be preferable if there was further consultation before the LPPs are finalised. The transitional period deadline imposed by state government for bringing the city's LPPs into line with the new legislation is 10 April 2026. The deadline is more than 9 months away. Would it not be better to take the time to get these changes right rather than to rush them through without proper review with community? Finally, given the large effort involved in the community consultation, the working party and the public consultation on the original LPPs back in 2020 and 21, the objective here, in my opinion, should be to limit the changes to be only those dealing with the new R codes that came into effect on 10 April 24 and to do the necessary housekeeping that exists. Thank you.
Thank you for the statement. And that brings us to the end of public statements. There were no approved deputations or petitions this month. So, councillors, I will ask you to confirm minutes of previous meetings, being the minutes for the Ordinary Council meeting of the 24th of June 2025. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kosovich and Councillor Burns, thank you. All those in favour of accepting the minutes? Okay, that's carried 8-0. We'll call it 9-0. Thank you, Councillor Powell. Okay, now I'll take the opportunity to make an announcement to highlight some good work done by one of the teams at the City of Subiaco, namely the Cultural Services team. Yesterday, the City of Subiaco held the second annual Student Leadership Connect conference. The event brought together student leaders from 3 local high schools to build practical leadership skills, and it was the first year that we were joined by students from all 3 of the local high schools. That was Perth Mod, Bob Hawke College and Shenton College, all in the same room together. Optus Stadium was chosen for the event due to its capacity and its layout. The venue was able to support not only concurrent workshops, but combined sessions of about 150 people in total. I'm not sure if we reached that or not. It was certainly over 100 people, but when you combine the students and their teachers, it was a big group. And I think it also added to the occasion. If you consider that these are high school students, they were there for a conference in the Riverview room at Optus. It seemed like a pretty nice change of scenery for them. I wasn't there all day, but the workshops that were scheduled throughout the day themed around resilience, conflict resolution, civic responsibility, and how student leaders can make contributions to their community and, of course, to the wider Subiaco. From what I could see, it was a valuable networking opportunity for the high school students involved in that they were able to meet some of their peers from other high schools. And it was a day with a mix of presenters, not only from the City of Subiaco staff, but also external presenters as well. And for my part, I participated in a Q&A. So throughout the day, students were able to submit questions, and they actually submitted about 100 in total, which I thought was an excellent sign of the engagement that was on display that day. I didn't answer 100, but I did take the stage with the Manager of Cultural Services to answer some of the questions on the spot. And the ones that I answered covered many things from my perspectives on leadership, how the city determines its priorities, how I became the mayor, and we even went through to some more light-hearted examples such as my favourite Taylor Swift song, and even a potentially loaded question about whether I think globally and act locally. I won't tell you what my answer was. Look, the Student Leadership Connect conference was a credit to the hard work and initiative of our cultural services team, and that was in fact the same team who not only started at 6:30 a.m. that morning, but also worked through until the evening to make a citizenship ceremony happen last night as well. So that was held here, and we welcomed 17 new Australians as citizens. So a hard-working team and some great work by that team this month. Okay, so that's my announcements. That's the end of the bit where we don't make decisions. But now, councillors, it's time to work our way through the agenda. I do have a possible en bloc vote in front of me, and I'm just looking for that now, but there's a number of officer recommendations in the agenda which weren't the subject of amendments or alternatives, so we'd be proposing to carry those en bloc as recommended without debate, and I've just found it. So those are... Okay, so the possible en bloc vote at this stage would consist of... I'm just wondering why one's greyed out and one's not. C2, C3, C5, C6, and confidential items AR1, AR2, AR3, AR4, and 13.2. Councillors, did you wish to pull any of those items from the en bloc? Councillor Burns.
I'm going to...
Sorry, you've got your microphone on now.
Thanks, Mayor McMahon. I'm going to withdraw my alternative to C4, so that would put it back on block by my understanding. And at the same time, I would like to discuss one aspect of 13.2, so I'd like to remove that, so one in, one out.
Interesting. Usually it's the other way around, but look, more than happy. Okay, so C4, if you're not going to move the alternative that you submitted, we can put that in the en bloc vote. So C4 would be carried en bloc, and 13.2 would be removed from en bloc. That's one of the confidential items, and we will now debate and discuss that, albeit behind closed doors. So, Councillor Kosovich, another one? Okay, if there's no other items to be removed from en bloc, I'll just confirm that the en bloc vote I'm going to ask you to vote on would consist of items C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, and confidential items AR1, AR2, AR3 and AR4. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the en bloc item? Councillor Kosovich, thank you. And Councillor O'Connor. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, councillors. The en bloc vote's carried unanimously. For those watching, that means that the items which form part of the en bloc motion were carried as per the officer recommendations with no amendments. Okay, councillors, we'll make our way through the remaining items, beginning with C1. Modified local planning policies 1.1 and 1.2. We've got an amendment from Councillor Johnston and an alternative from Councillor Johnston. So I will start by asking if there's any mover and seconder for the officer recommendation on C1. Councillor Kosovich, thank you. Moving. Do I have a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor DeVries seconding. Thank you. Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Please let me begin by acknowledging the excellent work of our planning officers in this matter, in particular Director Alex Petrovsky, who has been kept busy all day responding to some rather in-depth queries regarding the matter. In supporting the officer recommendation, modified local planning policy 1.1 for residential development, low and medium density, being forwarded to the WA Planning Commission, seeking approval to amend the deemed to comply provisions in design element 3.4, lot boundary setbacks of residential design codes 1, 2, modified local planning policy 1.2, residential developments high density, and that it proceeds to finalisation. And 3, following approval under resolution that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to finalise both local planning policies in accordance with Planning and Development Regulations 2015. I'm advised as follows. Planning terminology can be jargonistic, and the City, like any other statutory planning authority, is required to use this terminology in planning documents such as the R-codes. Recent changes to policies are technical in nature and have responded to community submissions raised regarding clarity of definitions. These changes don't change planning controls and were due to public submissions raised to help clarify the intent and operations of the policies. In saying that, I readily accept the detailed advice provided by Director Petrovski and accordingly do not believe terminology changes relating to the interface area, that is adjoining properties to abutting properties, require further edification or community consultation. Moreover, re-advertising and expanding engagement for the policies would delay their finalisation, particularly if the planning controls are changed and or if the West Australian Planning Commission approval is required, resulting in a risk that the City's policies are not in place by the due date of April 2026. I commend the officer recommendation to you.
Sorry, I'm distracting you, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. This is obviously an opportunity for us tonight to hear from the community, and I do recall that extensive consultation some years ago, and there was, I think, a tremendous body of work done by the community, and I do indeed recall that because, you know, there was some concern that these planning controls weren't going to actually be, you know, effective. But I think what we have tonight is a sense that the community did want some more community consultation, and I have been tossing up, you know, how that would look. But I've come to the view that this is a fairly minor change, and that's really where this hinges. I'm a great believer in community consultation and the power of community to look into issues, and I highly respect the two speakers who came tonight because they've raised important issues. But also I'm reassured by the advice of Director Petrovski that we're at no risk of weakening the protection of heritage. In fact, I think we may indeed have strengthened, and that's the position I'm standing on. I may be persuaded otherwise in debate, but that's where I stand at this point. The 32 days for community consultation exceeds the minimum by, 11 days, I believe. It's usually 21 days, and I think it did cover quite a range of different platforms, as I understand it. It's possible we could have, you know, had a small, you know, drop-in centres and so on. I think, you know, we can always do better. But I feel like, you know, with the have your say, I mean, again, you know, I always look for how we can improve, and that's something that might be for discussion. I think it's important that the officer recommendations do address the need for those changes. They're necessary changes that we have to make. This isn't something done on whim. A question about the timing with another 9 months, I think it doesn't come down to the fact that we make this decision tonight and, you know, immediately goes to the Planning Commission for approval, WA Planning Commission. I think my concern is if there's a delay, then we have nothing to protect the community with. So again, delaying finalisation by re-advertising could place the city at risk of having no local policy in place when the transition period ends. And I know that you've raised that tonight quite eloquently about, you know, 9 months seems like enough, but just to even get back into the process of consultation is time consuming. For this reason, and to ensure strong enforceable local planning controls remain in effect, I do support the officer recommendation, but also commend the community for being interested and engaged on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a speaker against the officer recommendation? Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you. I want to begin by acknowledging the work that the staff has done, and I think everybody has done, but in particular the staff, of course, in terms of doing this community consultation, and I think the process has been a correct and proper one to get to this point. You know, I think, at some meetings ago, approved the fact that this would go out for consultation, and we're happy with that ourselves. It's gone out, and I think we have to pay attention to what's come back. And so, in my sense, it's something which I've found over the last week, I guess, especially since the briefing forum, increasing degree of confusion about. And, you know, I just wondered then how the other punters feel about this, who may be paying even less attention. But so we've gone through the right process. We've gone out, we've done consultation. There have been some good things that have been picked up by staff and by, you know, through the consultation and the working group and other things. Then we've come back and they've suggested improvement, which I think it looks good in terms of getting clarification around definitions and all these kind of things. But then I feel continually confused by what the implications of that are. And I think there's a growing sense of disquiet about that. So I'm not criticising the process that we've gone through. Guess what I'm reflecting on what that process has turned up. And I feel less convinced that we've tidied it all up. I don't think we have a narrow time window, from what I can understand, and I think a genuine and faithful response to community consultation would be to hold for the moment, follow through on some of the suggestions that have been made, and I won't prescribe any of those now, but just to pause and to take some action to get this clarity that we need. It might take a month or two, and finalise it on that basis. I think that's what genuine consultation is about. I think what we've seen is, you know, the draft that we're looking at today is not the draft that went out for public consultation. And so that's an important aspect of this to me. And so we need to therefore recognise, and it's been redrafted based on the consultation, which is a good thing. But I just think we should pause and seek clarification before moving on. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
So do I. But you go first, Councillor De Vries. Question, please.
Yeah, through you. This is a question for Director Petrovsky. Just now, the point was made that this did change from the draft policy that went out to community consultation, and it is as a result of some of that feedback that there were changes. Could you clarify how many changes were made and whether that materially changed the whole policy, and, you know, to the extent to which the whole idea of community consultation is a feedback process? Would you say this was a genuine process? Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So some of the changes that occurred, all of them are listed in the track changes versions that we put up there. It was a genuine consultation process because we did put the policies out, and the changes that were made were based on the feedback that we got from the community and their responses, and that's actually listed in the report as well. Some of the contentious bits are quite interesting because they are terminology changes, but they are terminology changes as a result of the submissions, which actually help make the policy clearer. So by changing a couple of words, and the two words are abutting and adjoining, it doesn't actually change any of the planning controls as they apply on the land. So it doesn't change building heights, it doesn't change setbacks, it doesn't change any of those critical controls which remain. It was just a bit harder to understand them because of the terminology that's used both in the R codes and in our policy. So those amendments don't change any planning controls, just help make it clearer for the community. And the only real technical change that occurred was to increase some setbacks in local planning policy 1.1 as it relates to heritage places. So we actually sought to further protect some of our key valuable low residential density and heritage areas. So hopefully that explains it. We did try to make the changes based on the submissions who said actually it's a bit confusing when you use abutting and adjoining, so we've just tried to clarify that but not change any of the controls around that. And we haven't made any changes that actually haven't been requested by the community through the 30-day consultation process. I think we had nearly 75, 76 people download the documents, and you know, we had I think 11 or so submissions put in as well.
Yeah, sorry, just a follow-up? Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. It could be a point of order. Yeah, just a follow-up question. Like 11 doesn't seem like a lot, but I'm just clarifying, is 11 actually a pretty good number for feedback? Because I know that it takes a lot to read through documentation and for people to get to that level of engagement. So I'm just kind of clarifying that.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Look, I think it's a fair and reasonable number for the type of consultation and the document that we've put out. So we can absolutely get much less, and you know, one of our recent amendments only had a couple. Some DAs only have a few, but sometimes you get much more depending on the scale of it. Considering that these changes were as a result of the state government changes, not too many controls were changing. You know, we think it's a fair amount for what has been proposed.
Councillor White, I note you've debated already. Did you have a question of your own?
No. I feel like I was sort of misquoted in the question and answer.
Well, I've allowed other people in the past to give so-called personal explanations, so if you wanted to give a personal explanation of your own...
It takes 15 seconds.
Please do.
I never questioned the point that it was not genuine consultation, and both the question and the answer suggested that. I said it was genuine consultation, and my point was simply about how the feedback has come in.
I feel like we're going down a slippery slope now if you're going to clarify your question as well.
Yeah, it wasn't an intention
asked,
to be critical of Councillor White, and if it was taken that way, I do apologise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for both clarifications. The question I have, Mr. Petrovski, is around timing. I've heard from Councillor White that we need more time and we need clarity. I've seen an email from another councillor received at 5:10 p.m. saying that he can't say he's much less confused, but your answer is still very helpful to him, which I think means there is still some scope for clarity. If we were to defer this a month, say, would that cause any issues from a process point of view?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. There is an opportunity to defer for a month, noting that the next council meeting would be the last one before the caretaker period occurs. And if there was to do more, if there needed to be more work done on the policies, then we wouldn't be able to bring it up to the next council meeting, because we're getting very close to finalising our agenda for that, given that there's about a 3-week process before you get to an OCM. So there would probably be limited work that we'd be able to do before then. Then we go into caretaker, and realistically the next meeting that we would get to is November, if you know, depending on the...
Thanks for that. We understand the what happens between now and November, but I suppose the reason for my question is if you were given another month, would you be able to give some further advice that councillors could digest in more than the space of 20 minutes, which I think is what has happened today?
Thank you. And through you, Matt, we could always give more advice. Whether or not we'd be able to realistically change the policies based on that advice, I don't think we'd be able to do that.
Okay, well, I suppose what I'm wondering is, do any councillors who haven't spoken yet see any value in a procedural motion to defer?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. Councillor Burns, you're going to move a procedural motion?
Yes.
Look, I'll even give you the clause 7.1a, but you probably had your copy of
That's the only thing I did know.
the meeting procedures already. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burns, you can speak to the procedural motion if you'd like, and there's no subsequent debate.
I have a taste for it. That's all I'll say at this stage, that we should move to the next item of business and deal with this in due course. Thank you.
I'll put that straight to the vote. Thank you. All those in favour of the procedural motion to proceed to the next business under 7.1a. Did I ask for a seconder? Yes. Yeah. I looked at you and I thought of saying your name, but Councillor O'Connor seconding. Now I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the procedural motion. Okay, so the procedural motion's carried 6-3. We'll move on. Okay. I'm sure the community knows what a deferral means, but we'll consider it again probably in a month. And that's the end of the officer reports in the public part of the meeting, so we'll move to elected member motions, and we've got two this evening. First is 13.1. No, it's not. That's the confidential section. 11.1, the proposed naming of the Pocket Park as Tom Dador Park, submitted by Councillor Burns. I take it you're still wanting to move the motion. Do I have a seconder for the elected member motion? Councillor White seconding. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Member McMullen. That was a little frightening, but we'll march on accordingly. Councillors, it's pretty obvious what I'm doing or what I'm motioning you to support. I'm not somebody that pushes my barrow on getting support. I believe people need to make their own decisions. However, in this particular case, I will be brief to start with. I do not believe Dr. Dador's importance to the people of Western Australia and most especially to the people of Subiaco needs to be heavily pressed. If you're not aware of how important this individual is to what has taken place in Western Australia, especially in connection with the Barnett attempted amalgamations that would have seen an end to Subiaco and many other municipalities through the amalgamation process, which was effectively stopped by actions solely taken by Dr. Dador previous to the Barnett attempt. So I think we understand this. I would hope everybody does understand this. If they don't, there's not much I can do, but it is expressed as attached to my elected member's motion. Councillors, I'm going to place this back in your hands, but I will be very brief with regard to something the staff raised in connection with my motion, very just briefly, that there's a possibility of confusion in having a park named after Dr. Dador on Bagot, as well as the community centre. Firstly, I don't consider that this is by any means dangerous, and I'd add to that, I do not see the community. It's been mentioned to us before that the structure of the community centre is at its an expression I don't particularly like, but to quote the staff, that it's at its life's end, or whatever expression they tend to use with regard to some of our buildings. It's not how I see property myself. So I don't see it as personally. But even if it was a brand new structure, nothing stops us from removing the name Dador from that particular little 1960s building. So that doesn't frighten me. Now, what I will say, and before I place this matter into your hands, is that the parks are permanent, okay? Buildings aren't. Right. We see that with the previous my consideration of that I withdrew with regard to the hospital. You know, Princess Margaret Hospital doesn't exist anymore. Did for a long time. Okay, now there's no longer a Princess Margaret or a hospital named after her. So buildings aren't permanent. There was at a time as well. There was a Dador Lane inside of the markets. Okay, that's gone too, right? So buildings aren't permanent. Okay, parks are. Okay, even streets aren't permanent. You know what I mean? A lot of streets get moved, replaced. Parks don't. Yeah, we have parks that a lot of people don't even know why they were named as such. Mueller Park, for instance, albeit during World War II, it was renamed something else because it seems Mueller wasn't a particularly appropriate name, and then it was renamed. Parks aren't, you know what I mean? Mueller got his park back, okay? Parks are permanent. While there's an opportunity for a park, I put it to you, Dr. Dador, of all people, deserves this recognition above all other people. Anyway, look, I hear the bell, so please, let's talk about this, and I'd like to hear what everybody's got to say. Thank you. Member Mullen.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Yes, thank you. I'm just scribbling notes because Councillor Burns did not ask me to second this. And I thought, well, okay, as it came up, I thought it was worth putting it on the table. And because I do that, because as an elected member, I'm happy to take on board any proposition presented by by an elected member about something as naming a facility. And I think it's a worthy discussion that we should be having. And I'm certainly open to that. The naming of this park hasn't necessarily been something that's occupied my mind very much up until now. But I think given that one of our members has put it forward, I'm happy to give it this consideration. I like a diversity of names being given to our streets and parks and roads around, and giving the name of an old white guy, or in this case a dead white guy, is not necessarily something I feel like, yes, that's what diversity is about. But at the same time, I wouldn't want that to be the reason as to why we wouldn't name the facility after him. And so I'm happy for that discussion. And I think that it's useful to identify local identities that are worthy of recognition. And in that case, I'm certainly keen to hear the discussion about this. And I guess the only hope I would have is that it doesn't go the same way as, if this vote passes, that it doesn't go the same way as the Dador Community Centre has in terms of its upkeep and those things. But thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Speaker against, Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just start by acknowledging Professor Ian Dador, that's Dr. Tom Dador's son, who is here tonight, and say thank you for coming. And please know that your father was my GP for many years, and I held him in high regard there, and also for what he did in his achievements. But I know this matter is important to your family, but my approach tonight is not about your father's name, it's about the process. So if you will bear with me, I'll explain why. Thank you. I regret to advise that I cannot support this elected member's motion regarding the naming of the Rupert Street Pocket Park. My decision is based on the motion's failure to adhere to best practices for council deliberation and decision making. The motion is flawed for several reasons. Limited options. By only presenting one name for consideration, the motion restricts the ability of elected members to thoroughly evaluate alternative options for the park's name. Lack of consideration for alternative perspectives. This approach does not allow for a comprehensive discussion of potential names, which is essential for making an informed decision. Procedural precedent. The motion's format is inconsistent with standard practices for council decision making, which typically involve considering multiple options and engaging in open discussion. Furthermore, I'm concerned about the approach taken by Councillor Burns, who initially proposed the same name at the June OCM as an alternative to a Development WA proposed street name and Subi East development site, only to withdraw his elected member's motion before the meeting. The action suggests a lack of consideration for the views and opinions of his fellow councillors. To ensure a fair and transparent process, I believe the naming of Rupert Street Pocket Park should be reconsidered, allowing for a more inclusive and comprehensive evaluation of potential names via a strategic workshop. This would enable elected members to engage in a meaningful discussion and make a decision that reflects the best interests of the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. A speaker for the motion, if there is one. Okay, any other speakers? Speakers against? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom Dador's undoubtedly a major figure in the history of Subiaco, and we have a lot to thank him for. He definitely deserves recognition for his service to the city. However, I'm reluctant to support this motion for two reasons. Firstly, we already have a community centre which bears his name. Now, obviously, if we demolish the Tom Dador community centre, then it would have been completely appropriate to transfer his name to the park, which replaced that site. But I can't help that having both a community centre and a park named in his honour is a little excessive. Secondly, and more importantly, I believe that we need to include some form of community consultation in the naming of the new pocket park. One of our strategic pillars is connected community, and I think that engaging the community in the naming of a new park is a great way to support this objective. Moreover, the construction of the park is unlikely to be completed for some months, so there's no great rush to come up with a name for it. We've got plenty of time to come up with a suitable procedure and method for making this choice. Perhaps we could call for nominations from the community and have some creative brainstorm, or run a school competition, whatever. I think now is the time for some creative brainstorming. Choosing the name now just seems like jumping the gun. So even though I'm unable to support this motion at the time, I would like to thank Councillor Burns for his suggestion. I think this is the impetus we need to start our considerations for the naming process, and I look forward when we can make the final decision on the park's name.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor DeVries speaking against. Thank you.
Yeah, look, again, Councillor Burns, whose knowledge and connection to Subiaco is very strong and has, indeed in the past come up with some fantastic ideas like Heather's Walk to acknowledge the work of former Mayor Henderson. So it is indeed in your wheelhouse, Councillor Burns, to make us think about important people in our community. And that's actually the result of you bringing up and discussing Dr. Dador's contribution to the city, I'm sure has made the community more aware. And like other councillors, I too support the idea of a really creative process for this naming of the Pocket Park. We don't get too many opportunities to name parks. However, with the degree of creativity that Councillor Burns seems to come up with, I'm sure we'll also have other opportunities should this name not be the one that we choose in our final discussions. And as has been noted by Councillor Kosovic, there should be a process, and that process is yet to be determined, but some degree of community consultation would be obviously suitable. But I'm thinking of the next 50 years and who will be living in the community and the young people today who will be remembering perhaps some more recent figures that would be meaningful to them. So I think it's a chance for us to have a reset and think about what's going to happen for young people who are part of the community who say, I remember that person 50 years ago. So I think we have to be mindful of that in our decision making as well. But it is a group decision. Ultimately, it will come down to council having a vote on it. And again, I don't believe that there's any rush to make a final call on this tonight. But I certainly do want to commend fellow members for discussing it in this way, and also for Councillor Burns bringing it to our attention about the positive contributions that have been made in the past by this fantastic person. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers to my left? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. Look, I think I basically agree with a lot of the other comments, and Tom Dador's name is obviously hugely important for the city of Subiaco, and the name should be, we should ensure that that name remains. If something happens to the Dador building, I think we absolutely need to find, and we should be looking at that ahead of time. So if that's slated for removal, we should be thinking ahead of time. We've got a civic centre that's going to be being built, and perhaps there's probably a good fit for his name somewhere within the civic centre, given his role in the community. I think with the park, personally, I would like to see community involvement in naming the park. I'd really very much like to see that done as some sort of competition, short list of names, maybe those names come to council and we get a final selection to choose from, and that gets ticked off through the right process with Landgate or whoever. But I thank Councillor Burns for putting up the EMMM. I think that was one too many M's. Thank you for that, and I think it's been a really good, fruitful discussion. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen.
Tom Dado is undoubtedly a very influential figure, and it's important that he is recognised in perpetuity. We do have a Tom Dado Centre already, albeit one that is in, not great condition. I thank Councillor Burns for putting forward this EMM. And for, I suppose, galvanising our thinking around the naming of the pocket park. I don't support progressing the item at this point. I think it is important that we take on board the comments that others have made about community consultation, having a diversity of names before us to consider rather than just a single name presented in this way. Certainly, if anything happens to the Tom Dado Centre, it's really important that his name is commemorated in some other way. I think I would like to particularly look at commemorating his name in a way that relates to his activities in particular. So perhaps, as Councillor Johnson mentioned, something to do with the new administration centre might be appropriate in view of the work that he did and the impact that he had. So thank you again, Councillor Burns, for drawing this to our attention and galvanising our thoughts.
Councillor Powell, if you're still there and you wanted to debate, you've got an opportunity, but I can't see you, so I'm not sure that you're still listening.
No, thank you, Mayor. No, thank you, Mayor. I'm fine.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, well, I'll take the opportunity to enter the debate. I'll speak very briefly against the motion, and I find it unfortunate that I have to. I'm not particularly. I'm not opposed to the name at all. The fact is, we will be building a park, and it will need a name. But I don't think that tonight is the night that we decide that name. And I was quite glad that Ian Dador called me today, and we had a bit of a talk, because I didn't want this debate to be interpreted as any comment on a man's legacy or a comment on the contribution that this Mr. Dador's late father made to the city of Subiaco or to the local government sector. And councillors, I compliment all you on the way you've debated this evening. I did kind of wonder where the debate would go and whether we would remember what we're debating and what we're not, and I think it has been a really solid debate about the naming of a park. We haven't strayed into areas which I thought it was conceivable that we might. We've spoken about whether or not to name our new pocket park after Tom Dador. But the reason I'm not supportive of the name tonight and the elected member motion this evening is because I just don't think this is the way we decide a name for a pocket park. I did like what I heard from councillors Johnston and O'Connor in the sense that whilst we do have a facility name carrying the Dador name already, it would seem appropriate, and I think likely that that name continues in one form or another, either where it is currently or in a future City of Subiaco site. And I'm glad that was flagged this evening. Yeah, look, just a note on permanency. I think that was a fair point made by Councillor Burns. There are things that there are some things that are easier to rename than others. Parks are probably something which you expect will hold for a fair period of time, which I think explains the sentiment behind this motion. Although I do note that the lake, which I think up until recently was known as Lake Munger, is now known by another name, and I think that reflects a name which predated European settlement. So no things in human existence are ever entirely permanent, but when you name something like a park, it's about as good as you can get. So I would signal that we're going to build our pocket park. We will choose a name when we're ready, and if I'm reading the tea leaves right, we won't be doing it this evening, but there'll be a great appetite for doing it in an appropriate kind of way, and I would be quite supportive of seeing the Dador name remain in the mix. So I'm really pleased to have watched the debate from where I'm sitting. I'll now exit the debate. I will ask Councillor Burns if you'd like to close, and then after that we'll call the vote. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen, and thank you, councillors. I will close briefly. Excuse me. Look, I greatly appreciate what you've had to say about Dr. Dador, and I like hearing it. I think the more we say it, the more the community knows about the gentleman. It's not a name that needs to be lost to time. In saying that, and I can read tea leaves as pretty much as good as the mayor can too. So I'm not looking for a win here, but I would venture, and I'm also not looking to cause any trouble, but I would venture into the realms of irony. Okay, and where I see irony tonight is that the fact that I can move this and it can be debated and with respect to Dr. Dador, and I can see people wanting his name to exist in perpetuity in whatever that fashion holds in our future, still smacks of irony to me, because the only reason you get to actually say it is because of this guy. No, but the city exists because of Dr. Dador, right? We as councillors exist, as mayor, the staff, everybody in this room. We all sit here because of Dr. Dador. But beyond that, right, every other municipality, save a couple of the large ones that weren't subject to amalgamation, Stirling and I think it was Stirling, Wanneroo and one other, that were all put in danger, were all saved by this one man, right? So the fact that we, as I said, I don't think irony, I'm not attacking anybody, but irony is meant to be somewhat comic, right? But it does smack of comedy that we can discuss something and choose not to do it, but at the same time, only can discuss it because of the individual himself. But anyway, I will say this: you have shown Dr. Dador the respect he deserves. I am encouraged that what happens in the future, councillors that remain within the city will carry that, the mayor, etc. I don't find Dr. Dador in any danger right now. And I appreciate your comments with regard to that, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Burns. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favour of the motion? Of the motion to just to be crystal clear, to name the pocket park after Tom Dador. Okay. Those against? Okay, so I think the motion was lost 2-7. It's a little bit unorthodox, but Councillor White asked to make an apology. Look, if you wanted to do that, I'm happy for you to do so. I assume it's about something that was said in debate.
Yes. Sorry, I want to apologise to Mr. Dador. I think in the course of my debate, I was a bit frivolous about the subject, and I didn't know that Mr. Dador was here, and I just feel like I should have taken a different tone, and I just unreservedly apologise. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. That's very good of you, and we've seen you debate a number of times, and I think we know that there was no malice intended in your statement. Okay, well, I'm not aware of any urgent business this evening. Oh, of course there is. Gosh, I was just thinking about the park that may or may not be known as Tom Dador Park in future, and I forgot about the other elected member motion. Okay, it's one submitted by Councillor Johnston regarding the diploma of local government. It's agenda item 11.2. The elected member motion was duly submitted within time. We've got the motion and the reasons in front of us. Councillor Johnston, I assume you're still wanting to move your motion this evening. Do I have a seconder? Yes. Councillor De Vries, thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor. It's pretty self-explanatory. Do I need to read it out? Would you like me to read it out?
No, I don't think we need. I mean, if only Councillor Powell's face went on the screen, we could at least have it in front of us. But look, to the extent that there's people following along, essentially you're wanting to undertake the Walga Diploma of Local Government. You're seeking reimbursement of the cost of that diploma, and you've submitted 5 reasons as to why you're seeking that funding. I think that's probably enough for us all to have our understanding. If you didn't wish to speak to it, there's no particular need. Councillor De Vries, did you want to talk to it?
Just to say,
Carriage could be moved. I just don't know if there's a conflict here.
Yeah, we thought about that.
If everybody's happy that there's not, then I'm...
Yeah, well, I mean, for a start, it has been moved and seconded already, but I was taking some off-the-cuff governance advice from the CEO a short while ago about whether there's an interest that needs to be disclosed. There is arguably an interest, but it's one that doesn't need to be disclosed, and the reason is found in Section 5.63 of the Local Government Act, because this is a fee or reimbursement of an expense in accordance with a policy adopted by the local government, and there is in fact a policy that governs this type of reimbursement. So there's no need for Councillor Johnston to disclose anything. Councillor De Vries.
having just completed the Diploma of Local Government, I really can commend the commitment that's going to be made by Councillor Johnston and really say, look, it's a really fantastic course. I learned so much. There was... I'm just checking the modules here. Some of them weren't fun, but a lot of it was a chance to meet other local elected members from other councils and talk about a wide range of issues. It really contributes to my deeper understanding of the work of the city, our need for connection to the community, how to deliver strategic long-term planning. I think I already know how hardworking Councillor Johnston is, and she is going to be in for a ride, 12 months of fun, but definitely anybody who puts their hand up for this, we should fully support it, and it would be great to see more local governments in the western suburbs, and it was pretty well attended, but yeah, I'm not saying everyone should go into it because it's a lot of work, so thank you so much.
Excellent. We've got a mover and a seconder in support. Is there anyone who wants to speak against? Oh, jeez. Okay. Yeah, look, we can take speakers for or against at this point. Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd just like to, first of all, commend Councillor Johnston. I think it's very good of her. It's a great initiative. And I'm all for someone being reimbursed for professional development. And that's what she's seeking. And I certainly will be voting for it. So well done.
Excellent. Okay, well, we can continue the debate, lending support, or we can skip the speeches. Is there anyone who wants to speak to the item? Okay, Councillor Johnston, you could close if you wish to. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favour of the elected member motion? Okay, it looks like the motion's carried unanimously on a vote of 9-0. Thanks, councillors. Right, now we get towards the end of the public agenda. As I indicated earlier, no one's raised any urgent business with me, so I don't think there is any this evening. Let's move to the closed part of the meeting. I will seek a mover and a seconder to move a procedural motion that the meeting be closed pursuant to sections 5.232C and F of the Local Government Act, whilst the confidential part of the meeting is considered. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Johnston, thank you. I'll put the procedural motion to the vote. All those in favour? I've seen that carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, members of the gallery and the media. Someone will see you out. On agenda item AR1, Council resolved that the internal waste audit is noted. On AR2, Council resolved that the 2024-25 audit of opening balances of City's new digital platform is noted. On AR3, Council resolved as follows. That first, the Office of the Auditor General's report 17, local government management of purchasing cards - larger metropolitan entities, attachment 1 is noted, and secondly, the City's report addressing the one significant finding of the report at attachment 2 is provided to the Minister for Local Government and is published on the City's website subject to amendments as presented to Council. On AR3, it was resolved that the cybersecurity framework and maturity roadmap is noted. Yep. On 13.1, it was resolved that the Chief Executive Officer is requested to commence negotiations regarding the leasing matter described in this report, with a recommendation to be submitted for approval at a future council meeting prior to any agreement or understanding being reached. And finally, on 13.2, it was resolved that the ground floor of 9 Bishop Street, Jolimont, WA is leased to Benelongia Proprietary Limited, consistent with the terms contained in this report and otherwise on terms acceptable to the City. Okay, that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting, so I'll declare the meeting closed at 7:03 p.m. Thank you, councillors, for your contributions, and thank you, staff, for all of your advice and assistance.